Wow, Joseph. It's an incredible view, isn't it?
Yeah, who wouldn't want to live here?
Absolutely.
And it's a magical view with a magical house.
Yes.
Deal with this.
It is.
Let's go.
All right, let's check it out. G'day, John. How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Mina.
Hi,
Good to see
John.
you again. Good to see you.
It's a beautiful place here. It's hard not to go into a meditational state here, isn't it?
I do it every morning.
So, John, what made you start to think about building into a passive house sort of principled home?
Well, we were looking at a country property years ago and finally found a place like this. And when we decided to build, we went through a journey of different materials, different ideas, and I'd always wanted to build a straw house, so we sort of stuck on the straw idea.
Wow.
And then looking for a local builder, we found Stuart Lee, who's been amazing, and he's a Passivhaus certified tradesman, and he introduced me to the whole Passivehaus idea. We talked through it, got to understand it. We just fine-tuned the design and then the planning around the certification objectives of Passivhaus so that we were compliant with that. And so we went ahead, found the right materials, came up with a Strawbale panel prefab system.
Yep.
Cool sit-ups from Huff and Puff Constructions, believe it or not.
Wow.
And here we are.
Hey, John, this is a very interesting feature here.
Yes, this is what's called a truth window. So traditionally, homes of this nature, Strawbale cob houses, they like to show off the fact that it's made of straw.
Yeah.
And given that we have a passive house, which is completely airtight and obviously watertight, we put the window on the outside of the house. Normally they're inside. And so I've chosen to encase it with a wine barrel from a close friend who's since passed away, who found the property that we're now on for me. So this is my little memory of him, but also a way of seeing the straw walls behind the panels and the render.
Is it what the cows eat?
Yes, it's dry straw. There's no husks, there's no seeds, so there's no attraction for mice or anything like that. So it's dried and clean straw, not hay.
Wow, and this is what it looks in flesh.
Yes, that's a traditional small bale, and the manufacturers of the panels place those, actually use large ones into a frame, and they're pressed down under pressure and then encased in the timber and then trimmed with a chainsaw, and we end up with very clean, square, solid structural panels that are freestanding, so there's no extra timber frame. The panels can be joined together and provide structural integrity, so the configuration can be quite flexible and well above the building code.
It got a lot of strength, stronger than a lot of timber product.
That's right, it's all natural, recyclable. Hopefully we don't have to recycle it.
Yeah, and low carbon footprint.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's waste straw, so all the good stuff's been taken off it and dried out. The panels and the straw came from Wagga Wagga. That's where Huff and Puff live. And so I had 56 panels arrive on a truck.
Wow.
And we unloaded those, laid them out on the concrete slab, screwed them together, put the roof on, and then filled in all the gaps, and here we are. So.
The cows would freak out if they knew we were using their food to build their houses.
That's right.
When you build a house, is there any bushfire rating you need to achieve or any fire rating?
Well, we're in a Bale 12.5 area, which is relatively low for this country. The only additional building material we needed to meet that standard with the systems we have is actually the flywire screens. The straw is so tightly packed that you can virtually put a blowtorch onto the raw straw and it will just singe it. There's no oxygen, there's no air inside, so it's so tightly packed that there are examples in the US of straw houses that have survived where other houses have.
Oh, so they just perform like those high density hardwood.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent.
So it's better than foam cladding.
Just a tad, it won't melt.
The Strawbale got excellent structural capacity and good fire rating. What about the insulation property?
It's very, very good, as straw can vary from location, moisture and pressure that you could put it together. But the estimate based on the best science we have is that we've achieved a rating of close to R6.
Wow, R6 is very impressive. A lot of people, they only get up to R5 on their roof insulation and they're bragging about it. And for now, we've got a Strawbale wall with a built-in R6, which is roughly around 34 in imperial unit. Wow, it's excellent performance.
And soundproofing as well, obviously.
Yes, we can have 30-knot winds outside and there's virtually no noise. It's extremely quiet. You hear more of the roof than anything.
You may need to start doing like the cafes, put some white noise inside your house.
Oh, we've got dogs for that.
In this area here, you've got 16 degrees, 14 to 16 degrees in your earth. So you're thermally broken completely from that, which is awesome, isn't it?
We are.
So you're not walking around in winter with cold feet?
No, and in summer,
yep,
we've got to watch the sun coming in onto the concrete slab, but that's part of how they work. So no, we've had a winter through, and it's bare feet and no problem.
Awesome. So you got to protect that, you got to protect that concrete in summer like it's gold, basically.
That's right.
Okay, so John, your floor insulation is completely encased. What have you got?
So the perimeter of the slab, it's a 400mm slab with a 50mm XPS foam all the way around the outside edge. That was the Passivehaus model, indicated that being a requirement for performance of the slab. And then we've also, it's sitting on a waffle pod base because of the rock is everywhere here, so digging down deep was a problem. So there's waffle pods sitting on the ground, and then each of the edge beams, centre beams, are also the same XPS material.
Wow.
So that's providing insulation from the ground, although the temperature of the ground here is pretty moderate, so it's not a major impact.
So you've got these blinds as well, and how are they activated?
Well, they're activated by a Somfy remote control, and they're motorised from inside the headboard behind the render there. They're an integrated unit with the windows, so when they're open you virtually can't see them. And they can be managed by time or temperature or just by choice, either here or remotely.
How do you control moisture? Because in ordinary building, when we got stud wall, sometimes they got mold and condensation issue within the wall cavity. How do you deal with that in this house?
So there are several layers of material. The outside layer is a traditional lime-based render, which is air permeable, but it also provides the water proofing. And then the straw has its own breathability, although it's pretty thick, so that you're not getting a lot through there. And then we've got the Proclimber Intello paper on the inside layer of the straw, up against the straw, which allows that movement of air. So we do have two sections of wall where there's no straw, for structural, also for space reasons, and then so we have the same on the inside, but also filled with foam, but then the Proclimber exterior paper, and then a number of foam bases for the render to adhere to.
So you keep the whole membrane envelope continuous all around.
All the way around, yes.
Yep, that's very important, and you did very well.
Thank you very much.
So John, your knowledge in this stuff is fantastic. What's your background there? And so you're...
Well, I'm a retired IBM person for 30 years, and this project was sort of evolved over time, and once I learned more about the Passivehaus properties and the capabilities, it became obvious that there's an opportunity for me to move into that space.
Great.
I wish I had someone like me to talk to when I started.
Yes.
So my intention is to establish a consulting practice where I help clients who are looking for similar build properties, not necessarily straw, or it doesn't have to be Passivehaus compliant, but the principles are very sound, very simple, and relatively inexpensive to add to the build of your house, so I see a new career.
John, you just said it's not too expensive, the features. May I ask, how much did you spend on this house?
Well, the original budget of the total build was around $450. We did stretch closer to $500 for that total build, which is not unreasonable given the nature of the build and the learning process we went through. But the passive house component of it is around 5 to 6% if you count all of the componentry, the materials, and an allocation of labour that was used to fix the paper. Passive materials, labour, design costs, HRV, plumbing for the ventilation and the installation. So yeah, it's probably $20,000 to $25,000 on top, but I won't have a heating bill.
Yeah, 20 to 25,000. A lot of people can't even pay for their stone bench top.
That's right.
Yeah, why wouldn't they invest in this?
It's a no-brainer. The principles are simple. It's not expensive. You just need to take a lot of care when you actually do the installation and don't leave holes in the place.
The tender loving care.
That's right.
All right, let's move on. John, so we've got a bit of water on this property.
Yes, we do.
And a beautiful looking sandin.
All of the water's obviously on site. We're in the rural Victoria.
Yep.
So I've got over 66,000 litres of water, which comes off all of the roofs.
Yeah.
And we've connected into the house a Australian-made sandin heat pump hot water system, which effectively is an air conditioning unit, and it draws temperature from the air as part of the process for heating the water and keeping it warm.
John, fantastic views. The only thing that I can see wrong with his view is that I can't see any kangaroos.
Yes, well, we've got an unusual spot here where we see very few.
Yep.
What we do have is we seem to have a bit of a graveyard where the old big bucks come to die. So we've had a few of those here.
Yeah.
We do get a number along the other side of the river, but I think the dogs and the sheep tend to keep them at bay.
So this is where the kangaroos come to die, and I guess you could easily put some dead bodies down here as well.
You could,
Yeah.
down in the incineration pit.
And you've got crocodiles in the river down here?
No crocodiles, but plenty of hippos.
This house got excellent insulation under the floor and in the wall. What about the ceiling?
Okay, the ceiling has a couple of layers of insulation. It's a structural colorbond steel panel filled with foam, so solid foam glued together, which is structural in nature, so it spans just without any trusses, and that's an R5 panel. It's 250 millimetres thick. And then we have a 2.5 batt below that, sitting on a batten frame, which is where the plaster is adhered to. So it's effectively...
Oh, 7.5. Wow, that's very impressive. What about all the downlight? Does it degrade your insulation layer? Do you need to leave a lot of space around it?
No, you just have to leave a minimum space. I think it's about 200 round, and it doesn't penetrate the steel, the roofing system, so it's sitting inside the airtight layer, and also doesn't impact that insulation. Obviously we go around it with the insulation, the 2.5, so yeah.
Yep, you got an airtight layer on your ceiling as well. Is it the same system as what is in the wall?
Not quite. The corrugated colorbond steel itself is airtight.
Yep.
So when the panels come together, there's an overlap. They're pop riveted, and then we tape them with the Varna tape from ProClimer, just to be ensure that there's no leakage through those overlap seams.
Yes, there's one of the very typical issue we find on a lot of steel roof. People thought the steel roof are airtight, but they didn't consider the joining details between panels. So the last frontier remaining is your doors and window.
Yes.
Yeah, what are they? How can you maintain the same performance in those lovely big wide windows?
Yes, well that was a challenge. Because of the views and the environment, we really were keen to have large windows, which Passivhaus tends to constrain a little, so we've compromised a little bit on that performance. And we looked locally for windows, double glazed windows, which really aren't certified or test up to standards for Passivhaus. And learning how to plan for a passive house with windows, you really don't need them all to open. So typically we like to open up our houses completely for airflows and the like, but with a passive house you actually get better performance when the windows are sealed, and windows that are sealed are much cheaper, and that enabled me to afford German triple glazed windows from Dofner in Germany through Laros Technologies in Canberra, and they're terrific. Beautiful finish.
Triple glazed window.
Triple glazed windows, very heavy.
How heavy are they? Well, for example, this slider, for those fixed window, we don't care. It's just sit there.
They're not light either, but that total unit, including the sash, is over 460 kilograms.
460 kilograms.
When we started to realise the size of the windows and the weight, we thought we'd need a crane and a machine, but we ended up with 4 strong guys, 4 big suckers, and 25mm conduit, which rolled the heavy ones along the concrete floor. So
you
no
must
cranes.
have a team of Arnie moving that window.
Lots of strong boys, yes.
Yeah.
So what's the U value of this glass?
The finished installed U value for the window average is just under 1.
Yep.
It's basically an R value of 1, but normally classic double glaze or even single glaze windows are 6 times less efficient. So the triple glazing, argon gas and a low E coating on the face of the glass helps that performance. Not quite as an R6, but normally the windows are the weakest point of the house, and
well, you still follow the same rule of thumb. When other people got R1 to R1.2 in their wall, you got R6 plus, and when they got 0.2 U value, you got 1 point something. Yeah, it's just the same ratio.
No point putting in all the work around the envelope and the structure and then putting poor quality windows and then not sealing them properly.
Yeah, well, if people do that, it would just like a fish tank, they cut a hole.
That's right. Well, they are holes, and we're expecting to not really need a heater during winter, and 10% of the time put a cooler on in the summer. So that's where the savings can come with a passive house. So I have a number of different configurations in the house. This is a tilt and turn. So traditional open door, which has locks around the base, along the side and up in the ceiling.
Wow, it's like Fort Knox.
So that when you close the door, that has a wind latch which you can just pull open. But if you want to seal them, turn it and it sucks the whole frame into the seals. And then we have a tilt feature, which is very handy for windy days where you want some extra ventilation or let some fresh air in. It's just a simple move like that. Fly screens that are integrated as well. So with European windows and doors, they all open in. Australian doors open out, which makes fly screens complicated than they're normally on the inside. So you have to think differently when you're designing your windows and how they open, because it comes inside rather than outside.
And your sliders, they're pretty straightforward too. Geez, they feel so heavy, don't they? But nice and smooth though.
It's a 260 kilo sash. It's a lift and slide. So when you close the latch, the door drops down onto the seals and also grabs the side and pulls the slider in. We had originally had plans for bifold windows all the way across here. With a Passivehaus, they convinced me that you'll only open it that much and go in and out, and that's been the case. So we still can have the views, but also have the efficiency of not having leaky windows, because bifold doors are a problem.
So Joseph, if we had a single glazed window here on a 35-degree day, what sort of a heater would we have to introduce to simulate that?
Well, it depends on whether you include the direct suns or not. If you include the impact from the direct sun coming through the window, we can talking about a 2 kilowatt heater. Running in summer when you least wanted heat. So that's what the triple glazed window is doing, benefiting the thermal control of this house.
Isn't that great?
And in addition to that, we've got the integrated blinds that we looked at earlier, which when you've got that direct sun.
Wow, and it blocks it from the outside.
87% of the UV is blocked by these screens, so the very little heat will transfer.
Yep.
Wow, and you still can see through somehow.
Yes.
to check the condition outside.
Whereas outside, looking in, you can't see.
I notice you've got one little split system. Is that to cover the whole house?
Yes, that's the only cooling we have in the house. The Passivehaus principles doesn't cool the house.
Yeah.
It keeps the temperature constant and the air fresh. Yeah. So in times where 80 to 90% of the time you don't need heating or cooling, this is a reverse cycle. So in those 10 or 12% times when the extreme temperatures outside.
What's the kilowatt rating of that?
It's a 5.
5 kilowatt. And you've got 2 ceiling fans here to really help you move that air around.
Ceiling fans aren't part of the passive principle, but we've lived with ceiling fans in all our homes, and at night it's just a nice soft movement of air where, you know, even if it is warm, the movement of air is sufficient to keep you cool.
Yep. And you've introduced a bit of a bazooka here for a heater.
Yeah, this is called a bionic fire. It's a Passivhaus compliant fireplace, which is unheard of. Although it's not a certified product, it's capable of producing, I think this is a 6 kilowatt system, where I'm using 2 or 3 pieces of softwood in the top firebox, and it's producing a beautiful heat, although I've only ever used it once.
Can you use it to cook your dinner?
No, well, it's very efficient. The heat and fire is in the top box, and then a jet of flame comes down when it gets a certain temperature, which ensures that 70 to 80% of the combustible material is burnt.
So what's the efficiency of it?
I think it's 80%.
80%.
Around 80%. So temperature of the flue can be no more than 35 or 40 degrees. So all of the flame and the heat is contained in the fire and produced forwards. No fan, no electronics, and it pivots. Air is taken from outside, external air is brought through, and then the flue is sealed from inside. So there's no effect on the Passivhaus calculations or performance of the ventilation system.
Yeah, the flue on the outside looks like a SpaceX rocket.
Yes, well, you need, because there's no internal draw from inside, which is traditional with wood fires, so it sucks all the cold air right through the house to the fire to burn. All of the draw is produced by a triple flue system outside, which creates its own draft, which draws the fire. So there's really no effect apart from added temperature inside the house.
So this is from an Australian native mango tree. Is that right, John?
Maybe, we're not quite sure, but it's a very special piece of timber that we stumbled across looking for timber for elsewhere in the house, and it's got black disease in it, which highlights the flame that's come through the timber. So yeah, it's a gorgeous piece of wood.
Beautiful. Geez, who would have thought diseased wood could look so good?
Again, 4 strong guys had to bring it in.
Yeah, it looks heavy.
With the Passivhaus, having another vent or an exhaust is a no-no. Yeah. And so we looked around and found a charcoal recycling range hood. Yeah. So the exhaust fan takes the material up through a charcoal filter and then back into the house.
So it comes out of here and then comes back into your ventilation.
We've got an exhaust ventilation vent just nearby to take the temperature away. It shouldn't smell, and it doesn't seem to smell. And that's transferred through to the HRV system in the house.
All right, let's move on to the ventilation system. By the way, that's a beautiful induction cooktop. It's key to have no combustion in the building envelope when you're dealing with the Passivhaus.
It's nice and easy to clean, which I like.
Yep.
Bella's 15 years old, survived cancer,
wow,
and just resting.
John, how do these dogs get in and out of the house?
Well, again, with a Passivhaus, you need to allow for sealing for the dog door.
Absolutely.
So we sourced a door from Europe that enables the dogs to wear a collar. They come to the door through the access, and you can program that to virtually whatever weather conditions or security you're looking for.
It's a big door. I reckon I could fit through that. You
could, but you need to be able to open the lock.
Maybe you can put that collar around my neck so that it'll open for me.
So triple sealed and obviously weather tight, but also airtight as well, so it doesn't affect the performance.
Isn't that amazing? All right, let's move on to this ventilation system.
We've installed a Zender Q350. It's the new model that's just come out.
Yep.
That's 350 cubic metres per hour rated.
Yep.
I'm running the house at around 140, so it's only just ticking over. It's very quiet.
Yeah.
In fact, it's running now, and you can hear the fridge is noisier.
So how much does that run on low? How much energy does it use?
It's about 40 watts, I think.
Okay.
So it's just two fans, past a heat exchanger. Oversimplification is very, it's complex software, but it's a very simple process of extracting warm air, bringing fresh air in and transferring the temperature between the two.
And it filters?
Yeah, there's pollen filters and dust filters. You can adjust those for different allergies that people might have. Yeah. So you're constantly getting fresh air. Every 3 hours you get a refresh with 0.3.
Does it always run? It always runs night and day?
Night and day. When you're away, you can put it in away mode where it slows down.
Yep.
And when you're showering or cooking or using the facilities, there's a boost button in each room where it ups the ante a bit just to give it a boost. And all of the pipes and all of the vents come in through the ceiling.
The false ceiling.
And it's essential to have condensation drain so that any condensation stays within the house and that goes down into a drain.
Yep. So all the ducts that connect supply returns, they're all inside the building envelope?
Correct.
So they're not penetrating the building envelope to induce air leakage?
The only penetration are the exhaust and inlets out of the building, which we'll have a look at later. And everything else is within the airtight layer. There's actually no penetrations whatsoever.
John, I love your low flow shower head. Looks great.
Very low flow. And my wife was very keen to have a bath, so we're not.
So this really makes sense why you've got, how many litres of water have you got here again?
66,000.
Jeez, yeah, you'd need that for a shower for sure. I also noticed you've got some internal wall cavity sliders. Yes. These are terrible leakage points in the majority of homes in Australia.
Yes, I can imagine.
You're not going to have this issue here, are you?
These walls, all the internal walls are within the airtight layer.
Correct.
So there's no leakage at all.
In this rural setting, I don't think your sewage is connected to the main system. Correct. How are you going to deal with it? Is it using the traditional septic tank system?
Well, the council dictates no septic tanks in the area, particularly when we're only 100 metres from the water catchment. So it's partly irrigation, partly town water. So we use a completely sealed treatment plant, which captures all of the grey water from the toilets, showers, bathrooms, every piece of water that's produced in the house ends up in a sealed unit. It's processed, it's an antibacterial process, so you don't use antibacterial soaps and so on. And it's processed through there, and the excess potable water is pumped up onto the paddock and distributed in a field which evaporates or drains into the ground.
All right, John, so we're now going to huff and puff and pressurise and depressurise your home.
Fantastic.
All right, let's see.
Don't blow it down.
No. John, you got a great result for the air tightness. So you're basically low energy passive house.
Yes, certified 1 air change per hour, so pleased with that.
Dale's going to hate me say this, but I think Strawbale is the answer.
Strawbale and careful planning and careful construction.
Yeah.
Tick.
Good stuff. All right,
Fantastic.
mate.